Hello, welcome everyone. This is episode 2 of the Trivial Objections podcast. I'm your host, Jared. I'm here with my friends Daniel,
What's
Jacob,
up?
Yo.
John,
Here.
and Adam. And today
Salutations.
we're talking about who is the modern man. So, guys, who is it? Who are we as men in today's society? I'm just throwing it out. Who are we?
Well, I'll go ahead and start in
Go
on this.
ahead.
It's a hard thing to nail down. Right now, the biggest focus in society and in media, at least in the United States, is who are women, and that's who you hear about, like the rise of women in the workplace, in society. They're like
Hashtag me
controls,
too.
they're working. They're the ones getting degrees, they're the ones graduating from college, graduating from high school. They're making more money, and like men are kind of going to the sidelines nowadays, and so a lot of guys are struggling with identity, and so who we are as men is kind of a relevant question.
So true. I mean, just look at what's her face, Caitlyn Jenner,
Yeah,
the
right.
manliest of
Yeah,
men
yeah.
turned woman.
Bond wants to turn back again.
He does really. I'm still gonna call him he because he has the parts, right? Or does he not?
It doesn't matter. He was born with a penis, in my opinion. Science proves.
Where did you
What?
hear he wanted to turn?
I think I
back?
heard about that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what a way to start. So, what challenges do you guys think men have that they didn't have, say, in like our parents' age, that we as a male gender have now in a new what we call modern world now? What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, it's you can't really just talk about men, right? It's talking about like Danny was saying that you got to talk about women, like women too, right? And that's the big thing is like the rise of who is the woman, what is the woman? It's the same as the man, right? It's making everything equal, which in some ways is really good, but in some ways I don't know if it's really meant to be that way. But now it's all in the media. It's all the talk of society when it wasn't the case in our parents' day and age. So, I mean, you've got kind of the wave that society sends to us now as opposed to it wasn't really like that their age.
Sure, yeah. Like I feel like it's more accepted for women to get an education and make more than men, and not stay at home and raise the kids. So it's definitely
I think
empowering them too. So which is a good thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
fair.
the options, the availability is way more now too. Like the options I have for what I want to do the rest of my life, I have a lot more opportunities than my dad did. He knew exactly what he wanted to do when he was 8 years old and on. He wanted to work on the farm, and there just wasn't that availability or that stability for his life and his family without the farm. And for me, there was. So
Sure.
it's just different times than it was. For
I
our
think
parents.
that approach is what I think the root of the problem is that we don't have a set role anymore, and we do have
True.
all these options. Like
There's
back
no
in the day,
time.
it's like
Statistics.
men were physical, men took care of things, they made the money, they worked at the factory, they did the job, and now like women are doing these other things, and guys are like, what do I do? Like I don't have to just grow up and work on the farm. I can grow up and be a baker or a stay-at-home dad or whatever I want.
Or a
And like there's all this
nurse or a
confusion.
teacher. Yeah.
And there's just confusion, and nothing's like set in stone. So people have to like actually plan their lives now, and it's opening a whole different avenue up.
It's true.
That's true. But what's interesting is that in studies have shown that the more egalitarian a society is, the more that men will typically do jobs that men have done in the past, and women will typically go for jobs that women have always done in the past. So they always will go with the personal one-on-one jobs, where men will typically go with the jobs that involve their hands and aren't necessarily people-focused.
Why do you think nowadays that men are kind of slacking behind with compared to women? Do you think that we're just meeting a natural equilibrium now that women actually have the ability to do all these things, or do you think that men are threatened in a way?
I
What do you
think
mean
it's
by
a
like
combination
lacking
of
behind?
both. I think,
For instance, let
yeah,
me throw out some stats real quick.
sure.
44% of undergraduates in community and four-year colleges are men. So they're getting beat by women there. In college, the females have higher grade point averages. They're more likely to graduate. They are more likely to get professional degrees, bachelor's, master's. They are 60% more likely, actually, and they graduate more often from high school. And I think 3% more women hold master's degrees than men as well.
3%.
Huh.
Really?
In like the low, like 25 to 29-year-old
Oh,
age.
okay.
Okay. Okay.
So the millennial
So
generation
the
is
It's a new
upcoming
thing, yeah.
probably the first
targeted.
generation to where
Exactly.
women are more educated than men.
Right. And of all the jobs that just got lost in the recent recession, I think 3/4 of those jobs out of the 8 million were men losing their jobs.
Wow.
Do we think that might be because of the type of jobs men usually
Well,
have?
yeah.
Maybe those are the kind of jobs that are.
Well, that's the same reason that women's grades are better. They're trying to deviate that social norm of women not having as big of roles or different as that typecast of roles.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. But there's still this, what do we call it? Income earnings gap. So even though women are more educated, why are they making less supposedly?
Because
that's a whole different debate.
Right,
We'll have that another time.
Yeah.
You know, I think another thing that has to do with this thing is that I don't have the exact statistics, but I mean I can find them later on in the conversation. But the amount of households that grow up without a father in them has gone up exponentially compared to what it was. I think it started going up in the 60s. And I think that makes a huge difference, right? Because if young men don't have a male role model, at least in the household or around, to look up to, they're not going to know what the kind of ideal man should be, whether like that man is ideal, their father is ideal or not. They still don't have a man to look at and say, well, this is right or this is wrong. They're kind of just going around trying to figure out everything for themselves, which I don't think you can do on your own.
On that topic, I have a question. Do you think that men and women should have different roles? Like, for instance, you were just bringing up they grew up without a father. So do you think that a woman could not teach a man how to be, full to his potential because he needs those manly traits instilled with him, traits separate from what women should exhibit, traits that a man should hold dear?
I mean, so my dad wasn't around a whole lot when I was growing up, but my sister and I didn't get to see him very often. And so my mom raised us for the most part, right? And I mean, she did a lot more than I ever could have asked of her. And I mean, she showed me a lot about what it means to be a man, but I think that there's a lot that she had to do that she shouldn't have had to do.
What are one of those things that she showed you about how to be a man that she wouldn't have showed your sister?
I mean, it was always a big thing, right? That I was supposed to lead my sister. I was supposed to be a model for her in a different way. That if I was her older sister, it would have been different, right? I was supposed to lead her. I was supposed to protect her. I was supposed to take care of her, right? So it was a very protective role that I think if she had an older sister, it would be there, but I don't think it would be as prevalent a role to protect.
So protection is one of the traits I've seen so far.
Sure, yeah. So that's tends to be the women role. At least historically, it's been protection and nurturing. So
nurturing and caring is different from protection.
Right, very.
That's true. That's true.
I think he was more talking along the lines like if there was ever a bully, he would like step in the way, not so much like he will kiss her boo-boos or whatever it was,
That's true. Okay. So I think we can all agree that maybe our role is maybe not diminishing, but changing. And what can
Adapting, yes.
Yeah, adapting. So like, what do you think the future, or what can we do differently to, not necessarily make our position better, but like what can we do that can help us adapt to the changing world?
Well, let's go about it this way. Like, let's think about what traits historically up until now, because I'm pretty sure that, given certain cultures as well, but up until the technological innovations that we've made, the man's role has been kind of the same. They were the protector, the provider. They were the physical ones. They were expected to be strong and get, if they had to get in a fight, they could do it. They knew how to deal with nature, and they were like driven by competitiveness. Which of those traits are still important today? Which are diminishing, and what new ones have come around?
So I would say that there's still competitiveness. Men will always be men, but it's just
Mhm.
a different type of competitiveness. It's not like how much, I can lift. It's more like how many sales I can make at my job or how much money I can make. That's still a thing.
I think they're even killing that aspect with our youth. With what are those participation prizes? Like everyone gets an award. It's getting rid of our natural competitiveness. One is considered equal and winning,
Do you think that's good
but
or bad that we
I think
are?
it's terrible. I'm a supreme capitalist at heart. Competition drives everything that I really am,
Yeah.
and that I believe in this country.
Does anyone have a differing opinion about?
I agree with Danny a lot there. That's what drives us as men to better ourselves, and like one of the things I believe makes a man and should be a trait that most men have is having that stability to support a family regardless of what happens. So as long as you have your square one figured out and you can provide for that, everything else falls into place.
So providing.
Absolutely agree.
So you're a provider.
Yeah.
Would you say, and this is kind of a segue, would you say that that's more of, well, is that less of a thing in America than it is in the rest of the world? Or is it the same? Or is
It's
it more
worked
of a
for
thing in
me
America?
because I don't have a family yet, so I can get my square one figured out before I start expanding it. Other people don't have that. I don't want to say opportunity because that puts it in a negative aspect for the people that do, but you see what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Yeah, no.
I think as far as like the countries go,
Mm,
it is not necessarily America versus the world, but liberal societies versus what I'll call traditional societies. Like the more of a woman, the more rights a woman has, and the more she's able to work and provide, the less that role is thrust upon the man, and the more
Sure.
it's evenly sparse between the entire family unit.
Yeah, it basically opens up the egalitarian societies. Basically, just like anyone can be any like role quotation that they want to be in. Basically,
Correct.
kind of what it opens it up to. So
Sure. So I think we've kind of narrowed down that men in our generation are not less educated, but there's more competition in the workplace, and the typical men brings home the check, takes care of the family. That's kind of going by the wayside now, at least in America. So what can we do in the future to, like, what do you think we need to do to become more relevant or to be successful in life,
So
with this changing world?
I don't want to diminish the rise of a woman,
Mhm.
and I think that if she wants to work and carry the family just as much as me, if not more than I do, as far as financial goals, that's completely fine. I don't think men are men because they bring home a paycheck, but we can still be providers in other ways.
Right.
Sure. Like
yeah,
what?
I,
Like what other ways?
Just being there for our family, spending quality time, providing for their emotional needs, helping out with financial needs or time needs. Like let's say your wife wants to bring home the bacon. That's fine if she has a great job. Your role as the provider is to provide the family unit with care. Like take care of your kids, make sure they're eating healthy, exercising, getting mental stimulation, making sure your wife is happy. You still have to provide. It just doesn't necessarily have to be the financial realm that you're providing to.
That's a good point. What would you say about the the rising number of broken homes or single family homes without fathers? That's kind of going against you know your argument here. Is like, oh yeah, men can, like, provide and work at
It's a
home,
transition.
but you know less homes are having fathers, so that's kind of
Well, I honestly think that a woman can do a lot of the things that a man can. You know what I mean? It's kind of what Danny was saying, that a man can still provide. But I mean, like, if you look at certain traits of women, I mean, so women are typically more empathetic than men. They're
True.
more empathetic. They're more able to take the perspective of other people. They're better nurturers than men are in a lot of ways. It doesn't mean that a man can't nurture, but a woman can probably do it better in a lot of ways.
Typically,
I agree with that. You know, on a general sense, not in
Right.
each
Obviously,
individual case.
on average.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. On average.
But
Okay, so what should young men strive to be then? So, like, just whatever they want to be, or is there a certain model that
there's,
leads to success, or is it a combination of both?
I think they still need to exemplify the traditional roles of men just in a new way. Like we were saying with
Mhm.
providing, they need to provide whatever the family unit needs, and it
Yeah.
doesn't has to be finance. It's whatever they need.
Yeah.
I mean that's the definition of providing what you need, and a lot of times, I mean, back in the day it was food, then it was money to buy food, but nowadays we know that a family unit needs a lot more than just food. While
Sure.
broken homes are
Emotional
more
stability.
common now, that's a lot of it is just because it was deemed wrong and unmanly to get a divorce. And so like you beat your wife into submission or whatever. And now like we're understanding that people also need
All right.
those emotional needs, and you can't just like
Sure.
beat people. You have to like talk about it. You have to open up lines of communication, and that providing communication, whatever you got to do to try to make the situations work and not just run away. But it's still that whole bravery part about being a man, bravely open up a conversation, open up your heart, whatever you got to do. And, don't just try to be a bum and rely on your wife, better yourself while you're at home as well.
Sure. Mhm.
But there's a lot of other traits they can also exemplify. I was going to ask you guys, do you guys still think that men should exemplify kind of the physical side that we've been known to historically, being strong and basically able, capable of handling themselves?
Oh, I for sure think that's so important. It's not just like, oh, I can, lift these weights. It's more just like having pride in like,
If you physically can't do it, you know how to do it.
right, right. So like having pride in like your body and like taking care of yourself. That to me would be the most significant thing a man has.
His virility.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Are any of these traits, these positive traits, for like manliness, are any of them things women shouldn't strive for? Like, I think all of these
Good question.
good traits should be probably striven for by anyone.
I agree with that.
Or are there examples that are gender specific?
It's not a yes or no thing. It's a percentage thing. Men, unless our genetics just become absolutely crazy, will always have more of a physical form. We'll always be stronger. That's just genetics.
Right, right.
And with that, we should care more about that. Women obviously shouldn't. It's not a yes or no. It's not like men care about physical form and women don't. It's men have more of an input into it, and it's obvious in the numbers. Like, it's not necessarily we have to be big and strong, but we have to be capable. It's you shouldn't just ignore your body. That's, as a man, you should respect it and try to develop it.
Mm.
And it's not necessarily developing it by lifting weights. You can do fighting, you could do yoga, it's whatever you want to do to make yourself whole and full.
Mm,
But
yeah.
Right, but yeah, I think that's probably good for, on average, like we're saying, it's probably best, but there's obviously the outliers that, that wouldn't be ideal for them probably or something like. So,
Let me
I
ask-
can't think of a single case where that wouldn't be the fact.
like, you can't think of a case where
I can't think of a single time where a man shouldn't try to develop himself physically.
Right.
Yeah.
well, can you think of a single case of women shouldn't try to develop themselves physically? Like, I think everyone should probably try to do that just to be healthy and stuff. So
Yeah. So
I'm just trying to figure out the differences a little bit.
Like what makes a man as opposed to a
Yeah.
woman.
I think it's more important for a man's mental capacity because
Yeah.
it is biologically true that
Biologically, if we develop ourselves, we become hard and strong. And biologically, as a woman, if they don't do anything, they still exhibit all the traits of a woman. They still have,
right, exactly.
breasts and.
But if they're not physically fit, they might be not as healthy and not as like mentally like they're,
Like I
just
said,
exercise in general.
It's a percentage thing. Still, like body still develops in the way that they were meant to genetically.
Oh, okay. So you don't think they'd get as many benefits in terms of like health as we do by exercising.
I'd say they're different.
Other
like
than
Jared
just
said,
muscle mass.
we get a lot of like mental benefits from working out.
Oh, I
Developing
assumed
in any way.
everyone did. I guess we get more.
Testosterone.
Testosterone, yeah.
Testosterone is the male hormone,
Yeah.
whereas estrogen is the female hormone.
Yeah,
and so it affects your body differently.
yeah,
And,
and-
Right.
whenever you work out, you produce more testosterone, which is what makes you a man.
Yep. So yeah, when men work out, they get more testosterone. Like women will get testosterone, but it's not as high a level, and so men feel in their peak when they're working out. You know, women do feel good, but it's not on the same level as like a man does. So
Yeah, I mean, it
that's a big
releases
difference.
other hormones as well, but it doesn't increase your estrogen intake. It doesn't make you more of a woman. Whereas
Right.
working out scientifically makes you more of a man, of what makes you a man.
Right. What does, on the topic of testosterone, what does that do that is beneficial?
It gives you more semen. It makes your muscles grow. It gives you more energy. It makes weird stuff with your hair and acne and all these things that exhibit youthfulness,
Build muscle mass.
Yeah, it can help you heal too.
virility. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
it's-
so yeah, it just increases your physical fitness then is what I'm getting. Not necessarily like mental health. You said energy, but doesn't exercising also, if a woman exercises regularly, didn't she have more energy as well?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that it makes you more of what a man is made up of.
Okay. But like it okay. I don't
I mean,
my opinion is I don't think like the manliness for the sake of that is beneficial. Like if there are beneficial aspects for it, then yeah. But like just for the sake of it, then I don't see the pluses. Like when I asked the benefits of testosterone, you just said all of these things that make you more manly, and I guess more muscle. Like yeah, that's something that you're
So
gonna
you
have
don't-
more energy.
Do you not think that there's any traits that are manly?
Have we lost our manliness, guys? Is there
I
nothing
think-
that separates
I
us
think
from
LG
women now?
thinks that from the like get go that humans of both gender are essentially the same, and everything that we do and exhibit are just human traits and not necessarily gender traits.
I think there are definitely some different biological like aspects, like for sure that there are differences. Yeah, but I'm just trying to figure out the difference between like our concept of manlyhood and then also just the sex male. Like those are two different things, or are they not? Or are they the same? Like that's another topic maybe. So.
I mean, that's kind of exactly the
I
topic.
feel
we're on.
like it's relevant for the conversation.
Okay, so what
I mean,
what's the difference between being male and being a man?
Well,
You
being
mean like
male means-
masculinity?
yeah, being male means you have a penis and testicles,
Uh-huh.
and the general.
and
Not
your
anymore.
breasts.
I mean, if we want to get into the makeup,
No,
then
male is the sex. So yes, that is currently
that's what makes you a
the-
male.
what makes you a male.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
And you
you're right,
have
you're right.
the chromosomal makeup of the sex male, whereas
Right.
being a man is a societal role that is influenced by sexual statistics of that gender. For
Right, I
instance,
would agree with that.
yeah, society puts the role of man as one who protects because we are genetically stronger and bigger and more aggressive, and so we get labeled as people who are leaders and protectors, and we go out in nature and explore. So we seek challenges. So to be a man means that
To seek
is
challenges.
influenced by our gender, and that we are
Uh-huh.
providers, adventurers, physical specimens,
No,
so on.
yeah, I completely
Yep.
agree with that. It's in our biology to like be those things, which is why I feel like this moment in the 21st century, we're being challenged in a way we've never been challenged before. So that's going to lead to my next question: is have you guys at your point in your young life that felt like being a man has been a challenge or put you at a disadvantage because of that, because of the growing status of women in our culture?
It's such a stereotypical white privilege answer that I'm about to give, but yeah, absolutely. Like it's the whole like black movement thing. Well, what about what's the argument? Black lives matter. All lives matter. And I understand. I don't want to steal from their moment. They deserve their time. And I just sound like that stereotypical white
No,
privilege guy right now. But yeah,
say it.
it is a stuff. Like I struggle with the idea that because I believe in feminism, but like I don't want to. I believe in the human race. Like a lot of people preach equality. We should have an equal. Half the population's women, so we should have half the senators be women. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that. I think it should be the capable, and you guys have all the ability to go in there. And yes, there's a little bit of bias against you. That's just natural, and we'll get there eventually. But it's hard to argue from your side being a man, and especially if you're arguing with women, to like express it logically without sounding
Yeah.
like the privileged guy.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just being a man, like you're in some situations anyway, your opinion just kind of gets thrown out just because you have a penis and you identify as a man.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Especially being a white man in today's society.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like with with all the diversity, like our opinions, white males. Sorry if I let the cat out the bag, but
Yeah.
but
They all know now.
our opinions are mattering less and less now. Whereas 50 years ago, our opinions were the only ones that mattered because we controlled everything, basically. So
And
Now, are they
I'm
mattering?
Fine with, I'm fine with them mattering less,
mhm.
but I'm not fine with them mattering less just for the sake of the fact that we are white males.
Right, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, are they mattering less because of that, or because there are more opinions now in the pot?
I think it's a combination of
I agree. It's
of
both.
both of those factors. Like their opinions are in the pot, and also they feel more empowered. So they're gonna do what we used to do and talk down to people, and their opinion is being heard now. So they're like, "Well, I have a voice. Like, what makes yours so special?" Even though it could be this white man's opinion and brain is smarter than, say, a woman's, but she's more empowered now because of culture. So like we don't want to feel like the assholes and like try and spew that. So I feel like there's definitely conflict, especially with all this Me Too stuff.
So,
Like
are you saying that people look at white like men's opinions to like a less? Yeah, I guess less attention is brought to them. Maybe is that what you're saying?
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like not to say that that's not a good thing, but it's definitely true. Like especially from where we were, even in our parents' generation to our generation now, where it's like, maybe our opinion doesn't matter as much. Maybe there's more input in the pot now, and like
Well,
we
yeah.
also elected a
I mean,
woman
I
to
think
be
we're
our
all
leader.
glad.
So I
I
don't
think
know.
we're all glad we're not where we were, though, right? Like in terms of like the other voices not being heard. So
Obviously.
that's a good
Right.
thing. So,
Right.
but yeah, I see what you mean. How
Yeah.
our opinions could be overshadowed, maybe.
Sure. So I'm not sure if you answered this, Daniel, but did you come up with an example where being a man in this age put you at a disadvantage? Like
The only one I could think of, all right, off the top of my head, is diversity quotas.
sure.
Yeah, that's
Mm,
If you guys
That'll
all
do it.
like office, like that's the biggest, most prime example. You might be the best candidate,
mhm,
but they need to meet their diversity quota. They need to have so many women. They need to have so many minorities,
mhm.
and so you're looked over for someone else strictly to meet a quota. And being the majority, we have less funding for almost everything we do, scholarships, etc. So that's
So
the
your
most prime
example is
example. Yeah.
mostly in the workplace.
Workplace education.
Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard a lot of anecdotal examples where someone's trying to do a class or something, and they get paired up with. Oh, this is more of a minority debate, not necessarily a man versus woman debate, but yeah, I'll just stick with the diversity quota.
Okay. Uh, Adam, do you have an example where that might not, where you might you might, and you may not have an example, but where you felt like you were at a disadvantage being a man in this society now?
I mean, I don't think I have like a personal example of myself. I mean, I've, you know, just the communities I've been in,
Yeah.
it's just not, it's not really a huge thing. But I mean, there are definitely plenty of examples in the world. You know what I mean? There was the when Google fired that engineer who did the memo about questioning women in tech, and the fact that he was a white dude who questioned a white male, the guy who questioned it, they fired him on the spot, even though the memo was about how do we get women in more tech jobs because tech jobs are mostly men. But the fact that he was a white man talking about it, they fired him for
Yeah,
it.
there's
You know what I mean?
these taboo topics that being a
Yeah.
white man you almost can't talk about.
Right, exactly. So I kind of have another question. So like there are a lot of people. I don't know if any of you listen to Jordan Peterson, but I mean there are a lot of people right now who say that masculinity is under attack. Would you take it that far? Do you think it's under attack, or do you think it's just something that naturally happened after?
I think it's under attack as much as women are.
I think women are, right now they're currently going through an empowering phase, and where like traditional, I'll throw the tag on traditional
to that extent,
masculinity
yeah.
is under attack.
I would agree. I would say I don't necessarily think men are under attack. I think that our status quo is being attacked, but I don't
Yes.
think men themselves are being attacked. You know, there's still, you know, we're doing fine. It's just women are being empowered.
Masculinity as itself as an idea.
Mhm.
Right.
But you know, think about who Jordan Peterson is and where he comes from. Like, you know, he's, you know, a baby boomer who, you know, grew up where, you know, men are powerful, you know, and, you know, that's his bias. Not saying he's wrong, but I think we should take that with a grain of salt, honestly. But, yeah.
Hey, Adam, I have a question for Adam real quick. And it stop me if this is like too personal in your own stuff.
Oh, go for it.
But manliness in the church.
Yeah.
You mentioned much earlier that women are better nurturers. And I would argue that Christianity is a very nurturing, caring-based religion. And if that's the fact, then why is it that women aren't allowed in a lot of the sects to be, you know, pastors or whatever the title is in that particular denomination, to lead?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I don't have all the knowledge, right? But there is some verses in some of the writings by Paul that talk about men, specifically men being pastors in the church, right? So it's a big topic, and it depends on what denomination you are and what you believe, right? Because there are a lot of denominations that believe that that women can be pastors. But I mean, like in my denomination, the LCMS, it is only men. But I mean, women can. There are special things that women have, right? So they are deaconess programs. Women are typically more directors of Christian education, so they work more with youth and things like that. Whereas a man is going to be a pastor because he is supposed to be a leader, and kind of that's all of this is very biblical, right? So the man
Do you think
being the leader, the man being the fighter.
Do you think it's interesting how there's almost everywhere in society, at least in modern society, or I won't say modern and exclude, in liberal society, women can have any role they want, and they're allowed to have any role except for in the church. Even the Marines have opened up, and I would have thought that they would have been the last ones to open it up to all genders. But do you think the church is going to get to the point where it just is completely egalitarian? Or do you think that since they're kind of separate from the rest of the world, that they will stick to the classical, more traditional beliefs that men have certain roles and women have other roles?
It depends on what they believe in the inerrancy of Scripture. If they think that Scripture, the entire Bible, is completely from God, then they're going to believe that, you know, everything that the Bible teaches.
The literal
Scripture interpret Scripture. Well, if you let Scripture interpret Scripture, right? Yeah, the literal interpretation. Then no, they're not going to change, right? So the LCMS is never going to change, right? But I mean, if you think that there's a little wiggle room, then yeah, and a lot of denominations have, right? Because a lot of denominations see it the exact way that you described it.
Yeah, it just depends.
We all believe they're going to get to heaven, regardless.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's
So-
just you can be a pastor or not.
Yeah, and
But I mean, so like an interesting tidbit, right? Kind of going back to what you asked before is men. So households that have like a father around, the men specifically are typically more likely to go to church. And so there's something whereas if a man is not around, the man is less likely to go to church. And so there's something interesting about having a male leader that has some type of spiritual outcome where you are more likely to seek a religious thing if you have a man in your, like a specific man to look up to in your life.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
I don't know if so I don't know if that is, I don't think that's something that's in the back of the minds of the denominations that have men as pastors, but it's an interesting thing that just occurs, just kind of a side thing.
Why do you think that is? That I've never really noticed
been
that or like
instilled
heard of
It's
that
been
before.
instilled in us. Like we all grew up Christian. That's instilled in 5 out of the 5 people in this conversation.
So okay.
Yeah,
that-
but you think it would have not been instilled in you if you didn't have your dad around?
Well, to an extent, it brings up the argument Adam just said. That phenomenon just happens. So I don't know. I don't have a frame of reference to compare it to, but
Sure.
yeah, I think if I'd grown up in a non-Christian family, I wouldn't have that.
Well, it's not growing up in a non-Christian family; it's growing up in a dadless family.
Yeah, really.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Huh. I think that's just generations of
I
just
think-
the same way of thinking,
I think what it
I don't
is
know.
is that you grew up, if you have a dad, with a male role model, and so you relate to male role models. And in the church, pastors are male role models, so it's easier for you to transition to looking up to another guy. Where if you grew up without a dad, you don't have that real male role model, so going to a church is weird because there's a guy leading everything. He's like the head guy, where your whole life has just been your mom was like the person in charge and your role model of your life.
I got you.
That could be. I think it's very situational, but I think overall it's just history and years and centuries of men leading. So if you grew up going to church, you're gonna, think the man's gonna be the leader. So
Mhm.
if you have a man in your house, he's gonna probably in your same circle, he's probably gonna believe the same thing. So I don't know. That's what that's what it makes sense in my head. But
So
yeah.
did we say that the family, like single parent families or dadless families, are less likely to go to church? Was that the thing earlier?
yes.
Okay, that could just be because like those families are probably more likely in less stable situations, and it could just be a demographic thing. Like the people in that situation might also happen to be in the situation in
It
which
could be a statistical.
there isn't
assumption.
like going in
Is
that
it-
area or something.
It's an interesting
All
thought
right.
experiment.
Are
Right.
you saying like an interesting financial situation? Is that what you're getting at, or
Possibly. I'm just saying that might have been what we discussed in the last podcast. What was the word?
We'll call it a statistical bias.
a statistical bias? Yes, or
What Nate said it. I forgot
yeah,
what
I'm not
word
sure
he used.
what word he used. But yes, it could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that
Oh, okay.
yeah, the church thing could be a new topic for another day.
So let's take this where we've all come from, and what we talked about. I'm curious, what do you guys think the role of the man, or like what men versus women, the whole demographic there is going to look like 50, 100 years in the future? You think it's going to keep going the same trajectory to the point where we're basically the same people, but one has a penis, one has a vagina?
Yeah.
Or do you think that we're going to like rebound and reestablish our roles?
Something that book, I think, Sapiens, he actually mentions this, and he thinks in
by,
50 to
The book by
Harari is
Yes.
his last name. Yeah, he says by 50 or 100 years, he thinks like gender will just not be a thing anymore. Yeah,
I agree. I mean,
the gender role will just be gone. So
I think
that's the
if
extreme
things-
side.
well, I kind of agree though. I mean, like you're already seeing where there's people believe there are dozens and dozens of genders. Some people say that they're even asexual and things like that. I mean, and don't even identify as a gender at all.
Right.
Right,
Like
so I mean-
spectrum, yeah.
Right. So even now we're saying, like, what is the difference between men and women really? Like, what is their role difference? Is there one? And if we're asking this now in 20 years, I mean, what is it going to matter? You know what I mean?
Right, and look at the most prevalent roles like 50 or even like 30 years ago, how much it's changed since then. If that keeps going, then it'll just, fizzle, I guess, after a while.
You think that has a direct relationship to just our advancement in technology?
I think technology has a big impact on it, not only the medical and biochemical technology, but mostly, in my opinion, this whole debate and this whole question right here is related to awareness and education. So we are aware now, and people have a voice who are asexual, who are gay and tending towards gender neutral, where back in the days you couldn't even say that without getting, I don't know, thrown up on a cross and burned or whatever they would do at your certain time period. So people could talk about it, and not only can you say it out loud, but everybody hears you because of social media technology. And
more
we
people
know about
support
all
it,
this stuff,
too.
and we can all talk about these ideas, and they are widespread. Like
Right.
this phenomenon could have been going on forever, but we just wouldn't have known about it because it would have been in the darks. That's the special part. That's the most special thing about our current era and modernity, is because there's openness about everything and complete information.
Yeah, it's true.
So
It's like
I don't necessarily think there's a trajectory pointing us towards gender neutrality. I just think that we are aware of the possibility of it.
Sure.
Okay, so we're aware of the other spectrums involved in gender fluidity kind of thing.
Exactly.
And we can see those small percentages now, which
I don't
make
think
it
that
pop
it
out
was
more.
50% men, 50% women, and then 100 years it was 50%, and then
Okay.
with like 2% gender, and now it's just going to keep growing till it's neutral. I think that it's always been about the same. It's just we know about it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's power in numbers, and technology and social media have made those numbers, made the few the many, as they say, and those people in positions of power can no longer exert their influence as much as they could before. And those people in power were usually, very masculine, strong men, and
Mhm.
now it's those other people are having a voice in society. So I think that's a very good observation of what is happening here. We're just more aware of it than not to say that it hasn't existed less or more in the past, just that we're more aware of it for sure.
We are. I mean, it is. I'm not saying it's impossible or it's not happening. I'm just saying it's important to be open and to not just think in terms like that without considering the awareness factor. The factors we do need to consider, though, is that we are separate from nature now, and we can't just look to nature for examples, because there are examples, of gay animals and animals that fake certain genders. Like there's a fish that pretends like it's a woman, so like when a bigger, buffier fish comes, it doesn't feel threatened, and all these other examples in nature. But we are separate now. We're more driven by our society impacts than we are by nature a lot of times, and we have the technology to go along with that to make ourselves whatever gender we want, to take drugs, to take hormones, and so we can change everything like that. And the roles that genders serve in nature don't apply to us anymore. So it is completely possible that we would be one gender in the future.
Not genderless, but
Everyone would
need
still have a
gender.
sex, but the
Yeah.
gender would.
No, I mean, not
Yeah, right.
with technology. That's not even a requirement.
Yeah, that's true.
We
still
could
need
be a
some-
human gendered.
You still need some semen and
No,
not in the future.
no, you don't. No, everybody could technically just all have X chromosomes.
it's true, I guess. Make them in a lab.
Technology, man.
Yeah, I mean, we're already doing, like, there's humans born that have two mothers and a father. All genetically, they have two mothers and a father. And there's all sorts of other examples. Like, there's no restrictions as far as nature goes. So we can have one gender and be completely fine. Like, if men just stopped existing today, I guarantee the human population would continue on.
Yeah.
You think
It would dive. It would dive.
Oh,
for a
it would
bit.
dive.
It would
So
go
I was
up.
like, whoa, don't get crazy here.
They'd have to.
Obviously, it would die. It would just
but
continue as it has at the current, like, 1% growth rate or whatever it is. But
Yeah, we got what you're saying though.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't think the human race will die off, but it'll suffer.
Yes.
We have to think that, Dan.
We have the technology.
Now, if women all of a sudden died
Oh, no,
off,
we're
would
done.
we
Yeah.
have? We're done.
Yeah,
We don't
that's
still
true.
have the technology for that.
Yeah, we,
Quite yet.
right. Currently, in 100 years, if they died off, we'd be fine. But
Yeah.
currently, we can't bring them back to life to like harvest their chromosomes. So like we would still be kind of screwed. But
Yeah, we need their eggs.
or we at least need somehow to produce them, and we don't have that technology yet.
Right now, we still need eggs. Yes.
Yes.
For sure. All right, so I think we started the show with who is a modern man.
Did we even figure it out?
I don't think we figured it out. I
I'm
think
gonna lay it down. This is who I think the modern man is. So there's a
Mhm,
few things he needs to take into consideration.
Mhm.
We all agree he's kind of the provider, and we talked about like he needs to be able to provide whatever it is that his unit, whether it's a family, whether it's a friend group, whether it's a baseball team, he needs to be able to provide whatever it needs, or at least not all of it, but he has to be some involved in that providing role.
Capability. Yeah.
Yes, he has to be capable, and capability transcends all aspects. Like he needs to be physically capable. I'm not saying he needs to be an Arnold Schwarzenegger or a Bruce Lee, but you can't just be like a couch bum. Yeah, that's not a manly feature. Manly features, like whether he hikes or does yoga or is a power lifter. He just needs to be somehow in tune with his body in that aspect.
Mhm.
I also think that a couple of the other things that men in a modern era should exhibit is I think we need to get back to our roots as far as our mental health goes and explore nature and be adventurous because
Mhm.
manliness in my mind is tied directly to adventurousness and the explorer spirit. And by being in tune with the earth and the world around you, I think you have a healthier mental aspect and you just like there's nothing more manly than a a guy with a big beard with icicles hanging off it just climbing a mountain. Like that is like the epitome of manliness in most people's minds when they think of that. That's just like an explorer
That's what I think
mentality.
of when I dream
Yeah.
about Ryan in the woods. That's what I see. An axe with like
Yeah.
a plaid little vest and
And
beard
that
with
is just
icicles on
like
it.
whether whoever you are, whatever your ideas are, it's like a general concept that you see, and it is just like a power over your environment. And I guess that can transcend nature and some of the old concepts and go towards like it goes back to capability. If you're an author, be the best author and know it in and out. If you're a tech guy, know your environment of your world and your tech. But I still think that there's importance of going outside and seeing the world because we're not going to get past our world and we need to respect it. And that's part of like being a man is kind of being the gardener.
The gardener. I kind of like that. The gardener. That's a good analogy. Anyone else have anything to add about, who as men we are in the
I want
21st century?
Yeah, I think my opinion does differ. I think that there are definite like good things about. I mean, a lot of those things are positive things. And have a healthy mind and body is always a good thing. But
Mhm.
I still lean towards that's good for either gender. And like the whole role thing about being the provider is I think that's I don't know. I just think it's outdated and well, I mean, you do basically
You do you. Yeah. Okay.
individual type thing. Yeah. So.
Sure. So you're more on the like be your own individual. Gender roles aren't the same now. Like just be who you want to be.
Yeah, I also think that a large percentage of like men will obviously lean towards the whole manliness
Sure.
side of things, and that helps them and makes them feel better about themselves, stuff like that. So, but everyone's different, and different
Sure.
stuff works for different people. So.
Sure. Johnny, what do you think?
I think more so along the lines of being a provider. I think that's just kind of a stability. Women are better nurturers. I know women are a better nurturer than me, so I'm going to try to make that as easy for them as possible to do because I want to better myself and the family. So
Yeah.
I think it's really being adaptable and learning how to best provide for that situation. I think you always need to have that stability to where if she's having emotional problems, you can help her. If someone's having financial problems to an extent, you have a solution for them to help them. I think you always almost have to have the answers.
Yeah. Yeah, that that kind of goes back to Danny's point, being a provider, being a solutions person. So yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. Adam, do you have any input?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with with Danny and John. I mean, I look at things from a design standpoint. You know what I mean? I tend to think that we're made the way we are for a certain reason, and I think that we should kind of embrace those differences. I totally believe that men and women are different in plenty of ways, and that men are good at some things and women are better at other things, and vice versa. And so, I don't know, like the provider thing, or even just the testosterone thing, right? I mean, embrace that, right? Be as fit as you can. I totally agree with Danny about the nature thing. I mean, like, embrace that. Get out. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. So embrace it. You know what I mean? I think I agree wholeheartedly with the women being better at empathy, and they're better nurturers in generalization. And so I don't think that we should hold that back. And so I agree with John in that do whatever we can to let them do what they are designed to do. If that makes sense.
No, I totally get it. No, lastly, I think my thing is I'm more in support of, men doing what they're good at, and being able to nurture that. So being the provider there, but if they don't want, if their wife has a strong personality, or their girlfriend, or their mother, whatever makes them happy will make them passionate, and that'll just make you a better person, whether that's, going to the gym, going outside, or even if that's, playing games, or um, you're into cars, or whatever it is, just, do things that make that you enjoy doing. And I think the masculinity thing versus female thing will kind of take care of itself, and you will end up being the best man that you can be. So um, I'm kind of in the middle in terms of that, but yeah, it was a good talk. Any last words, guys, before we wrap it up? It looks like it's an hour in, so any last thoughts on this topic?
I think I've said what I've wanted to talk about.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think might have came across of having the alternate opinion, but I think that I might have also been focusing on the outliers a little bit more. So I definitely agree. Do what you're good at, and men tend to be good at some things that more often females are not good at, and vice versa. So
Yeah. I like the previous comment about how in 50 years it won't matter. I mean, the social norm will be so different because people will be around it longer. So Lord only knows what we'll be at.
Lord only knows. I definitely want to get a woman's opinion on the
As
subject.
to this podcast.
I have
that'd be nice.
So you have Daniel, you said you had a few in mind that might wanna
if we
come
do
on?
another one, like who is the modern woman, let's say.
Sure.
I have a few friends I would like to
Awesome.
to
I would love it.
give their input, and it's going to be a fiery debate too. So.
Love it. Okay, so let's try and set that up. So yeah, if there's nothing else, guys, thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching, if you're watching, and you guys have a great night.
You too. Thanks.
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 Take it easy.